So when I was a teenager, I was called a sponge. That's cool. No, it's not cool. It was an insult. Isn't that a good thing, learning like a sponge, right? No. A sponge takes stuff in, it absorbs energy, but it only gives stuff back when it's pressed. Yes, that is how a sponge works. Sponges are like energy vampires. They take all your energy and they just leave you feeling tired. I'm sorry, what was that? If you're on a team, ask yourself, how can I innovate? What new things can I bring to the table? What can we do differently? Welcome to the Clint Malley Show, where we make marketing simple and more fun. Quick question for you. Are you a sponge or are you a pioneer? And if you don't know what I mean by sponge or pioneer, well, in this episode, we're going to show you exactly what that means so that you can tell if you're actually adding value to your customer, to the people who you're making content for, or if you're just kind of only doing shit when you're pressed for it. First, let me define what a sponge is. We tend to think about a sponge as being something that's good, right? Like I learn like a sponge. No, it sucks. It's a bad thing. Here's why. When I was I was given over guardianship to two families throughout high school. One family took me in for a while.
Like, that was very special. You didn't have to do that.
They were like, yo, you're a lot. They gave me back. The second family adopted me, and when they did, they were with me for a lot longer. I was able to graduate high school with them, but I was a fucking mess. I was a hot mess. I was always getting in trouble. I was always like creating stress in their life, and I was not good at being a team player within the family, right? So I had consistent meals and I had a place to stay and I had clothes to wear, and that shit was amazing. But what I was not good at doing is doing anything other than surviving. And so the father of the family, he took me aside one day and he goes, Clint, I feel like you're being a sponge. I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you take stuff. You take our food, our money, our love, our space, all of that. But you only give anything back if you're pressed, if we ask you to do something. And that's not what being in a family is about. Being in a family means that you're not just giving stuff when you're pressed. And I got it. Oh! It made sense to me. I'm not saying that I turned things around that day, because it was a long and slow process for me to not be so selfish in my everyday life through, marriage and through working with people and all of that shit. Like, to be a part of a team, especially when you spend so much of your time just trying to survive, that's a hard mindset shift. But I have a feeling that even if you didn't grow up how I grew up, that you probably have encountered something like this, and you yourself may be a sponge too. Here's what I mean. So if you're on a team and you're only doing the things that your manager or your boss asks you to do, then you're a sponge. You're not creating anything. You're only doing stuff when you're pressed. Now, this means that you're only doing the duties that other people tell you to do, that you're only creating the products that other people tell you to create, that you're only executing the plans and the strategy that other people or higher ups are telling you to do. And this sucks. Now, most people would say that they don't like this kind of work. Ugh. That they want to have some form of autonomy. In fact, in Daniel Pink's book, that's the book Drive, that's one of the things that he says is a key indicator for success at work, is autonomy and the sense of mastery, that you're able to kind of get better at your craft, right? And the thing about this is that if you want autonomy, but you never do anything autonomous, how do you expect to earn that?
That's a good question, Mayor. Let me get right on that with thinking.
Right? Here's what I mean. How do you expect for somebody to say, you know what, you just do what you think is right. If you've never shown that person how you doing what you think is right has worked before. If you've never created anything outside of the scope of work that is written in your job description or within the scope of that's like in the contract that you've been working with, if you've never done anything outside of that and you've only done what other people have told you to do in that industry, then you will never have the ability to be autonomous and to have the freedom to say no. We get mad and we get pissed when people say like, this person's telling me to do this and this person's telling me to do that. But when it comes, like push comes to shove, you've never actually created any shit on your own.
Perhaps you're right.
Like you've never actually proved any results from stuff that you've initiated. And that sucks. That's a shitty place to be. Now, if you're able to be honest with yourself and you can own it, then that's okay. That means that like, hey, I get it. I haven't done this shit. I haven't actually made anything. I haven't created anything. And I could see why you don't want to follow my idea. So I'm going to go create some stuff.
You bet your ass we are.
Now, when you do that, kind of goes back to our first episode of like building a stage and a platform. But when you do that and you're able to show traction and results, when you're able to measure pretty much the scientific method, you have a hypothesis, something you think you should be doing, and then you go test it and you measure it and you come back with those results or those numbers, you're able to say, oh, like, yes, that does make sense. Then it makes sense for the people who are higher ups with you to be able to give you that freedom and autonomy. So if you are not doing anything other than the stuff that you're pressed to do, then don't think that anything's going to change. Don't think that shit's going to let up. Don't think that people are just gonna stop telling you what to do after you've been there for 4 or 5 years. They're always going to do that until you're actually able to create something, you're actually able to move something, you're able to have an idea, create it, measure it, and then repeat it. A side note, in marketing, we tend to think about everything as like this exact science. But there is a shitload of mystery in there. For example, the Google algorithm, people have ideas. People have like, read into Google forums and posts by, authors or leaked or things that people who work at Google have said. But the Google algorithm is a black box. The YouTube algorithm is a black box. We have a general idea of best practices, but it is not a fucking science. Nobody knows exactly 100% exactly what makes a post rank on the first page of Google, right? And so we do things that we test. Somebody says, hey, you should have long form content. So we create some long form content. We measure what other people have done. We see trends, we recognize patterns, we try shit out and we see what works. And when we find what works, we explain it to others so that they can try it and test it themselves. And the more these kinds of things go around, that's how we get these kinds of practices. But make no mistake, every single best practice in marketing and content marketing came through somebody who was not a sponge. It came from somebody who was a practitioner, who actually did stuff, who was a pioneer. So a pioneer is somebody who's willing to set out, and I do not mean this in like the white supremacist colonialist narrative. First of all, let me just say that. I mean a pioneer like somebody who's going out to a place that they've never been before to learn something or to try something new. You've got to be a pioneer. That means that even if you're not an expert, you're able to tell people stuff that you've learned, even if it's small, right? I think one of the first practices that will make you a pioneer is if you learn something that can make somebody's lives better, create some sort of content and teach that to other people. It doesn't have to be profound. It can be something that maybe other people knew, but you just found out and it's helpful for you, right? And you haven't found a video or something on it that actually is good or entertaining, right? So you can create some sort of content around that. That's the first step. When you learn something, it's almost like the content marketing golden rule. When you learn something, create some piece of content and pass it along. As content marketers, we're just learning from each other. We're a huge network of people who are trying stuff out, using the scientific method and seeing if stuff sticks, right? There's more than enough knowledge to go around. There's more than enough businesses who need marketing tactics and strategy and consulting. There is more than enough websites that need to be built, more than enough videos and podcasts and blogs that need to be written. The pie is huge. You are not hurting yourself if you share the knowledge with other people. It's not going to make you less money. It's just going to help other people out. But the magical thing is that when you get into the habit of actually creating content that helps people, then you start to become confident with not knowing everything and documenting the journey. This is a journey. What you're watching, what you're listening to right now is a journey. But this is stuff that I have tried out and worked. And it's worked. So for example, I manage a team currently, right? And on my team are different people, and all of those people have different skill sets that complement and are better or different than my skill sets. And that's a good thing. You want people who are good at the shit that you're not good at. That's helpful. After I've written something, I need an editor to come around and to check my grammar and shit, because I'm guaranteed to be too close to my writing and I'm going to miss things. And so I need somebody who's more detail oriented than me to be able to come buy some copy or some writing or some words on a web page and be able to look these over, right? That's something I understand. We need that kind of stuff. If the people on your team, especially if you're a manager, only do things when they're pressed, then you are not a family, right? I was not being a family member when I was in a family and was only doing things when pressed. Hey Clint, put away the dishes. Okay, I'll put away the dishes. Hey Clint, pick up your room. Okay, I'll pick up my room. Hey Clint, you left your towel in the bathroom again. You're not a caveman. Pick up your fucking shit, right? Like, these are things that people said to me, that the family said to me.
Really?
Not in those words, but these are things that people said to me. And it was true. Like, I wasn't being a good family member. That's not somebody who's like thinking about other people, right? Part of being in a relationship or being on a team means that you're thinking about the good of the team as part of your own time and own thinking, right? So if you are on a team, if you're managing people or if you are being managed by other people and you're only putting out shit when you're pressed, you are a sponge, you're not a pioneer. If you want to help the people around you, if you want your company, your business, your department to grow, if you want to get results, if you want to make your culture at your business better, then you have to foster a sense of innovation and mistakes. Now, what happens when you say, okay, Clint, I'm gonna go let my team be pioneers, right? I'm gonna go let them try stuff out. I'm gonna let them go create content and we're gonna see what happens when they come back, right? We'll measure the results. What happens when that shit falls flat? What happens when it fails? What happens when it does worse? What happens when it loses the business money? Now there's a quick knee-jerk reaction to immediately pull that shit out.
That's what she said.
To say, well, this stuff didn't work, so I'm just never going to do that again. I'm not gonna let my team do that. I've got to safeguard myself, whatever. Now, if your team is able to learn something that can advance you from these mistakes, then you did a good job. Even if they spend 2 hours creating a video that gets 0 fucking views, but they learn why this video got 0 views, you have gotten something valuable. You have taught them a lesson. Teaching is also called education. Education means to draw out. The idea is that within every person, there is wisdom, but it needs to be pulled out.
That's what she said.
Hey.
If you just try to impart knowledge and say, hey, employee, I need you to do this, and they do it, you impart zero education. You're just downloading shit for them. But if you're able to teach them through them experiencing something and drawing out wisdom from within them, for allowing them to come to these conclusions and to be able to make inferences and guesses and hypotheses and figure stuff out, now you're actually building your team. Educating is not about productivity. Educating is about building. It's not enough to just do things. You actually need to make something. You actually need to make things better than they were before. Because I haven't met a company yet that doesn't want to grow in some way, shape, or form. And you only grow through education, not through telling people what to do. Be the pioneer and not the sponge. I promise that if you're willing to look at yourself and recognize that you're the sponge, then you can start becoming the pioneer. If you're the manager and you see a bunch of sponges on your team, then you need to empower them to be the pioneers and let them know if they fail, it's okay. You have to create an environment that allows people to try to be their best fucking selves. And even if it doesn't work out, that they can learn something from it and get better. All right, that's it for me. Listen, it would mean the world to me if you could like, if you could share this, if you could subscribe. If this episode brought you any type of value, comment on it. Leave a review so that I know what was important. If you didn't like this shit, if there was something that you hated, leave me a review. I read every single one. I comment on every single one. So listen, I appreciate you. Go be great. All my love. See you on the next episode.